All right. So our learning objectives today for this training and demo are really to orient all of y'all to the data dashboard. So we'll talk a little bit about how it came to be, why we decided to build this tool, and then we'll kind of get into what is presented in the data dashboard. So what kind of data is available there, how to navigate it. And then as with all data, we want to make sure folks know the limitations and the assumptions that are within the data sources so that you can use it effectively. So most of y'all here probably serve farm workers and therefore may already know all of these things, but really there's a great need to reach farm workers, and we understand that at NCFH, and many factors influence that. You know, they're highly mobile. They may be moving from state to state, within states, country to country. They're isolated, usually in rural communities. They can lack transportation to seek out services. And then, you know, they're working really long hours. And as hourly wage employees, and usually pretty low paid hourly wage employees, they also don't really have the time or the luxury to get time off in order to seek out services. And then we have language barriers that exist as well. So when we're trying to support the outreach of folks to farm workers and programs serving farm workers, we understand that there are all these barriers in reaching farm workers. And so we wanted to provide folks really with the data and the tools in order to make the best decisions they can and how they execute those programs and interventions and outreach. So we really started with a few key questions in order to support public health action across the US. So kind of we're thinking about where are the large concentration of farm workers. So, you know, within the country, that's one of the things really about this tool is we're taking a countrywide view, a national view, a state view, and then within a county too. So where are the concentration of farm workers? And additionally, you know, what is the seasonality of that workforce? At what time during the year do we see an influx of farm workers entering an area, and what can we do to prepare for those workers? What agricultural industries employ farm workers in the area? So are they working in the crop industry? Are they working with animals? Because definitely different occupational risks, you know, are there for depending on what industry that they're working in. There may be different outreach techniques as well. And then once we kind of see that full picture and those trends and the landscape of the area, you know, a lot of questions that come up are, okay, well, where do I actually find for farm workers? Where is that outreach happening? How can I plan effectively so I'm not driving around the whole county, for example, and things like that. And so, you know, really thinking about the housing sites, the work sites, the farms, as well as those resources that exist in the area to support those services to farm workers. And so when we went to kind of answer those questions, we wanted to do it with data. And while we found a lot of, you know, data that does exist on a national level, it's kind of spread out everywhere. And if you don't know where to find it, or if it exists, it's sort of hidden, it's difficult to find. And here are just some of those data sources that we'll get more into with the dashboard. And then on top of that, maybe you found the data, but it's not always accessible and it's not always presented in a way where you can come away with some key insights. So some of y'all might be familiar with this visual. This is a job order for H-2A workers, which is a visa program to bring foreign workers or people here to work in agriculture temporarily. And so in agriculture. And so, you know, this has a lot of great information for folks doing outreach. They probably know this, you know, where exactly they are, all of that, but you're not really able to step away and see the bigger trends of the H-2A workforce, which is really critical. So we wanted to do some of that. So that all kind of came together, and when we, you know, came up with, okay, well, how can we make that data more accessible? How can we centralize it? The goal of this dashboard really is to bring data to the people that need it the most in order to use it effectively for action. So we want it to be easily accessible. We want all of the information that we can have access to be in one place. So when a public health official or outreach workers or anyone looking to serve farm workers is trying to make decisions, they can hopefully start at one place and kind of download all of that data and get that bigger picture. Didn't do this alone. This project is part of a larger project that NCFH has with the CDC as part of a cooperative agreement that we've been working on for the past 2 years, really focused on addressing infectious disease among farm worker communities, specifically COVID-19. And we built this dashboard with the help of the Texas LBJ School, the University of Texas. We had a lot of guidance from our advisory council for this project, and then also had a lot of partners that helped us review the first version of the dashboard, give us feedback. Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid helped a lot with that, as well as they have a great data tool that we were able to use and integrate into this dashboard. All right, so now kind of to get into the actual tool. So we have 3 main pages that are within this tool. And the first one is really focused on the general population. So this is going to be trends that are looking at what we know about farm workers as a general population, which we'll get into who exactly that is. So this page is going to give you some quick summary numbers, high level, and then we'll get really into understanding more of the concentrations of farm workers at both a national level, a state level, and then a county level. And then the other key piece of this page is really understanding the seasonality of the workforce, again, on those on a state and county level. And the data here is really based on the data that we're able to get from the Census of Agriculture, which only is collected every 5 years. Therefore, we can only update it every 5 years. And I will say they're in the process of doing this right now. So the data that we have is from 2017, which we recognize feels maybe a long time ago, and lots of trends may be slightly different, but it is the data that is available. So this is a quick screenshot of what our dashboard looks like. And we'll go into the details, but just to give an overview, you'll see the left is really our navigation to get around. Up at the top are those summary boxes. So we're going to give you a high level view for the state, the total farm workers, dependents, H2A. And then our map is going to tell you more about the concentration of farm workers. And the charts over on the right-hand side are looking more at that seasonality of the workforce at a state level and a county level. Just a close-up. So what we're talking about again is that general population, and how you get there is really that navigation bar, and that's how you're going to navigate across the dashboard. So who are we talking about when we say general population? This includes direct and estimated data for all farm workers, so those that are directly hired by the farm, and also those that are contractors. So that's including H2A, undocumented, no matter what their citizenship or their work authorization looks like. We have the data for the financial dependents of farm workers who are residing in the US. Who does that not include though, is any disabled farm workers or retired farm workers. It doesn't include owner operators or unpaid family members that work on a farm. We recognize that there's a lot of small farm operations that don't have hired workforce. That doesn't include them in these estimates. And then also want to just point out that we're talking about folks that are working, employed in that county, and not necessarily residing in that county. As far as the data sources, as I mentioned, a lot of these are coming from the US, or it's based on the US Census of Agriculture, which is every 5 years. That's where we get our directly hired workers come from. And then our contract workers, we estimate based on the dollar amount producers report spending on contract labor. We make an assumption when we do these estimates that that contractors and directly hired workers are going to make the same amount of money on average. So that's just one assumption to keep in mind. And then we also are able to provide, in some cases, beyond that total workers within a county is the number of workers that are in livestock production and the number that is in crop production. However, this also comes from the USDA, and there are many instances where the USDA has suppressed this number within the county. So I'll show you an example of that. And then our number of dependents, this is based on the number of dependents in the US reported by crop workers by the National Agricultural Workers Survey, known as the NAWS. And so we also are making an assumption when we do our estimates that livestock workers have the same average number of dependents. And then our estimates also take into account H-2A workers and how that may impact the number of dependents within a county. So since H-2A workers are traveling here on their own without their families, we did use that number of H-2A workers within a county, subtracted it so that we're not overinflating the number of dependents in a county the best that we can with the data that we have. All right, so now I'm going to give you all a little live demo. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Any questions while I bring this up though? Not yet, okay. All right, hopefully you're all seeing the dashboard, Bethany? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. So hopefully this looks familiar, just like the screenshot. So on the left-hand side, I'll point this out first. This is going to be how you get around on your dashboard, your navigation. So first piece is just your filter. This is how you select what state you're really going to focus on. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to stick in the general population page for right now. But again, how you get around to the other pages, more information on our sources, and then if you're interested to check out more of what NCFH does. So we'll stick in Alabama, since that's where we're at right now. And then you'll see our summary boxes up here at the top. If you do hover over them, you'll get a tooltip, which gives you a little bit more information about the data source, some of the stuff we just went over. And in some cases, there are links in here to find out more about what exactly the data is referring to. And then when you get down here into the Farmworker profile, first thing I'll point out is this little drop down. So right now we're looking at farm workers, no matter what industry that they're working in, but you can just look at those working in animal production or crop production, especially if you have a focus in one of those. However, again, some of this data is suppressed, so just keep that in mind when you do make those selections. We'll stay in all production though for now. Next is this map. You have the choice to look at it. We're in Alabama, so we're seeing the state map. You can also get a national view so that you're at you can see Alabama, which is highlighted here in comparison to the rest of the rest of the country. However, of course, California has so many farm workers, it's a little bit less of an interesting map to kind of see those concentrations. You can kind of start to see overall with the estimates down here at the bottom, the percentage of workers that are in each state compared to the total number of workers in the country. And then back here at the state map, we can kind of start to drill down and get into what are those concentrations per county within the state. And so you have a legend here, gives you some scale, and then you can start to do a few things to kind of play with this map. You can see, hover over the counties that are the darkest, which is going to show you the some more information. If it's available, it'll show you that breakdown of animal production and crop production workers, and then the total workers and the total dependents. Down here at the bottom, again, is that toolbar. So you can see what the proportion of workers in that county is compared to the full state, which can be helpful, for example, if you're working at a state level and you're trying to plan effectively, where your resources are going. And so maybe you want to reach, you want to see what the 3 largest farm worker counties are, the counties with the most farm workers. You can start to do that down here and see where they show up. Or maybe you're more interested and maybe it's, your money can go and your funds and your resources go a little bit further by staying in the most concentrated geographic area. And so you can see, towards the top of the state here, we have a lot of counties that have a larger proportion of farm workers in them. The last thing that you can do here is, so this is how, you can scroll around and see that, but maybe you know what county you're working in, or maybe you're less familiar with the state and you just want to, you can type it in. So let's go to DeKalb. So that was here. And it'll highlight that for you. This has happened to NCFH a few times when we're working in states and we're not as familiar with the counties, but we know which ones are the highest concentration, and it helps us get a visual for where they exist within the state. I'm going to click off that for a second as we move. Oh, the last thing here is that we do have the option to download that data into a CSV, into a worksheet, so that you can use that to integrate and do any other sort of data analysis on your own that you wish. And then on the right-hand side here, this is when we start looking at those seasonal trends. So the first chart or graph is the state, the overall state trends. And we can kind of see, if you hover over again, you're looking at those number of jobs, it gives you some more data. But the general trend that we're looking for is what is the seasonality of the workforce? Again, we're in all production, so all farm work within the county or within the state. And we can kind of see there that we have that peak, a steady increase in jobs, and then we get to the peak towards June. And then down below that in the chart is that county level. And so you can kind of manipulate this in a few ways, depending on what you're trying to do. One of which is maybe you're like, okay, well, we're going to work in May and June. That's where we're really going to focus our efforts. So you can come down here and you can look what counties are going to be in May are going to have the largest concentration of farm workers. And we see DeKalb, Coleman, and Baldwin there. And then you can also kind of see, once you get those, what does it look like throughout the whole year? Additionally, maybe you're over here and you see that concentration in farm workers in DeKalb. If you click over here, it's going to automatically bring your selected county to the top, so you can look at that seasonality right away on the county view. From here, it's pretty similar to the state. However, it does have this similar, I guess, here as well, that kind of increase in jobs that we see right there in October, November time. I'm going to pause and see if we have any questions. I don't know, Bethany, if questions have come in, anything else I can show? Or if folks want to go off mute.
No, mostly questions about the slides and the recording. So we will make that available and we'll have the recording available on that webpage, but we'll let you guys know via email too.
Velma?
I had a question. You mentioned dependents. How do you know how many dependents are per worker? How does that come about?
Yeah, I can touch on that, and then Bethany might have more of the methodology remembered. But so the National Agricultural Workers Survey, the NAWS, that is where that data comes from. And so they do a survey. It's a sample of farm workers, and they come up with, it's a regional estimate for dependents. And so again, we recognize that it's not going to be necessarily the same everywhere, because it is coming from a regional estimate, and then we apply it on a state and county level. And yes, the data, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say the data is from 2017, because that is when the last ag census came around. But yes, once we get their updates from 2022, we will be doing our population estimates again. That data does take a while to get to us, as a lot of time, it's a lot of data. But as soon as we have access to that, we'll be updating these population estimates. When do we think?
So last time with the 2017 data, I think it took us, it takes them about a year. So the data I think aren't really ready to go until 2018 or early 2019. And then it took us like a year and a half to get that data. So we probably would not get updated estimates until 2024.
Yes. All right. Any other questions so far? Yes. All right. I'm going to stop sharing that. See if I can make this work.
There was one more question about if the map graphic can be downloaded.
At this time, it can't. However, feel free to screenshot it. Is probably what we have right now. But if that's something that folks are wanting, we can look into how we can make that a graphic to download. All right. Hopefully this is my slides. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the H-2A population. Like I mentioned, this is a visa program that allows employers to bring people mainly from Mexico into the US to work temporarily in agriculture. And they have a really unique set of needs in a lot of cases. And so this page really explores the trends of that population. So again, we'll have a quick summary of same as before with the general population. It'll be very similar. You'll see concentrations of H-2A farm workers on a national, state, and county level. And then we'll also see the seasonality trends, both of how many workers are present, as well as at what time of the year that they're arriving. And then the last trends that we kind of explore is going to be the contract length. So the number of days that they're employed on that job order. So all this data comes from the job order. And this is important because in some cases we have really short jobs. They only last, a few months, and other times they're, here on a job for almost, 10 months. So when you're thinking about reaching that population, this kind of information we're hoping is going to be helpful. And this is updated annually so that we can see that trend for the full year. Little snapshot. Again, looks pretty similar. This time though, we're talking about H-2A populations, but you'll see those concentrations by counties. And then we'll also see the seasonality, kind of the influx over the year by month, how many H-2A workers are present, as well as when they arrive. So for example, in this screenshot of Texas as a state, we see a lot of workers arriving towards the beginning of the year. But if you're looking to reach the most workers at one time, for example, you may wait a little bit until everyone arrives and you have kind of like more people there at once for your resources. And that's reflected also down here in the last chart, which is showing the length of the contracts. Texas is pretty unique in that H-2A workers are here on really long contracts, almost a full year, because that's what's required of the seasons. Whereas some we'll see when I demo this that are much shorter contracts. They're here for a smaller amount of time because that's, you know, a quick harvest season, for example, like blueberries or something like that. Again, the best way to get there, or the only way I should say, is this H2A population on the left-hand side. Data sources, so again, these are all from the job orders. They're based on data reported by the Office of Foreign Labor Certification in the US Department of Labor. So employer submits an order for temporary labor, and that's where we're getting this data from. And so it's really based on that order. There could be delays in when workers actually arrive, things like that. And we're not able to really predict that. So keep that in mind as you're looking at this data. And again, this is updated annually. All right, stop sharing.
There's a question, Sarah, about H2A workers. Have we thought about a model to predict the number of workers every year?
Sorry, say that one more time.
So the question is if we've thought about, I guess this is for all workers, Antonio, right? So if we've thought about a model to predict the number of farm workers for every year, so in the future, rather than only looking back.
We haven't, but that's an interesting idea. Especially, I don't think we could do something like that with potentially with the general population. I'm guessing would be a little bit difficult, but with the year over year for H2A, it could be really interesting. I know there has been an enormous increase in H2A workers over the last decade. It's a great question. All right, so here we are. I'm going to go to our H2A. And then we'll mix it up. So we'll go to Georgia because we've been doing some work there. And I'll note that the dashboard will take a second while it brings up all of that data. And it's working, so just be patient with it. All right, so now we're in Georgia. You'll still see that huge, or those kind of buckets of total farm workers and H2A workers. And this one's really interesting to look at because, as you notice, H2A workers are almost making up half of the estimated number of workers within the state in Georgia. And now down here, again, you have that option to look at it on a state map or a national map. A difference here is that we do have that kind of month by month change that we're able to get from this data versus the estimates. So right now we're looking at February. So for example, like on the national scale, you know, if NCFH is looking, or any national organization looking to do work with H2A workers, and we're looking towards February, we're probably going to want to concentrate in Florida. But if we, you know, maybe it's July, for example, we click on that, we see there's a huge difference of where the concentration of H2A workers on a national scale, which makes sense because seasons. And so we may focus in those states. And so the same thing is true within your state. You know, changing from month to month, you'll be able to follow the seasons and see some of that. You also have the option to look at the all H2A requested workers that year. Give it a second to update. And this looks over total for the full year of those requested. And similar, it's going to work in the same way that the other map works, in that you'll be able to hover. It's going to give you the total H2A workers requested within that county, or if it's for the month, for that month, and then give you the percentage of the proportion of that to the whole state. So similarly, if you're looking to serve, let's serve 25% of our of the H2A population in Georgia, we can really focus in 3 counties: Colquitt, Bacon, and Clinch. And then over here on the right-hand side, you'll start to see some of those trends. So We're at the state level, and the first one's going to tell us when are the most H-2A workers within the state. We see, towards the summer there's when the peak, when the most workers will be there at the same time. And then the next chart is really telling us when they actually arrive, though. So this is pretty important because we see that they all are arriving in March, and then we have the most in May, June. So depending on what your strategy is, if you're looking to, hopefully do outreach to workers right when they arrive, you may focus more in March or beginning of April versus, trying to reach all workers and allocate your resources in that way. And then finally, we look at those kind of contract lengths. So again, different from what we saw in Texas, we see a lot more shorter contracts in Georgia. And then all of this is also available in for the county. So NCFH staff is actually in Colquitt County this year, so we can go there. And we'll see these charts change to represent the data from that county specifically. So pretty similar to what we saw for the state as a whole, but their season starts a little later, right? We see that influx of workers actually coming in April and March. And so, you may plan to start services in April and then really in May as well. And then similarly down here, we can see there's a little bit of a difference in that they have those short contracts, but they also have workers that are there almost all year round with the longer contracts, as well as this kind of peak in October, November. So potentially 2 seasons or more within Colquitt. Lastly, you are able to download this data. Again, this is just the CSV as well. And it'll give you, it gives you the trend data. So it'll show you, again, those numbers that are reflected in this map. And I'm thinking, and similarly here, same thing, if you want to use this as a search bar versus kind of, roaming around the map and seeing what works. I'll pause and see if there were any questions.
There is a question. I wanted to make one point because people get confused about this really quick. The 2 tabs, the general population and H-2A, just so everybody knows, the general population those numbers include H-2A workers, they include undocumented workers, migratory settled, it's everybody. So because we have more data about H-2A workers that can provide insights about the whole farm worker population in that area, we pulled them out and did a separate one. But just so you know, we're not excluding H-2A or undocumented workers from those general estimates. And then Sarah, so Theo has a question about the map supporting per capita rates. So like the number of farm workers per 100,000 people in the general population.
That's a great idea. We don't, but we'll put it on our update, on our ideas for next iteration. Any other questions?
You could always too, Theo, you can download the county data, and then if you have the county population, you could add a column and then pretty easily calculate that. So not in our dashboard, but you could use this data to do that.
Good point, yes. All right, stop sharing that.
Sarah, there's one more question here. Are these data available without an account?
Good question. I'll go over this in detail when we talk about how to get onto this dashboard. But at this time, we are asking everyone to have an account and also to fill out a little form before we grant access to the dashboard. And that's really to protect the data and how people are using this data and understanding this data. It can be easy to misinterpret the data, and it also can be, we want to make sure that the folks that have access to this data are using it to support farm workers and that really being the primary goal. The data that you can share, when you gain access, there are some agreements that you kind of agree to, and it'll tell you a little bit how we're asking you to share the data itself, if you do intend to share it and use it for other purposes outside of your internal planning, for example. All right, so the last page that we'll go through is the mapping tool page. And this is really, we've seen kind of the trends, and now we're focused more on maybe the action. And so this is really going to allow you to be able to zoom in and see, within a region, an area, where are, for example, H2A work sites and housing sites. We're also providing data on farms, specifically those inspected by OSHA or Wage and Hour Division, WHD, and then resources in the area, so migrant health centers and community health centers. Similarly to the way the rest of the dashboard works, if you hover over something, most likely there will be a tooltip, and that will show you a little bit more data about that location. We have that option to export data for H2A sites. And we'll be updating these H2A locations on a quarterly basis. Some of the other data that's there is available for, is only available updated on more of like an annual basis. Couple screenshots here. So this is just an overview of the layers, so you can add and subtract things depending on what you would like to see on your map. You also have the option to filter in the H2A sites that pop up on your map, so that you only have active sites, for example, or maybe you do want to look at some inactive sites. Again, just another example. The data sources here, so those H2A work and housing locations are from the same data source, the Office of Foreign Labor Certification, their quarterly data. And then we also provide some information on the number of workers requested, as well as the occupancy of the housing sites that are on there. The farm locations, again, are from OSHA and WHD. And then health center locations are from public location data from the Health Resources and Services Administration, HRSA. And it was short and quick, so we'll do. All right, so back on the dashboard, we're going to go over to the mapping tool. And since we are in Georgia, it automatically kind of gets us over to Georgia, but you can always change it. So for example, we're about to go to Yakima County. You can type that in, and it'll zoom you into that county. Up at the top, it will give you a little bit of instruction for folks that definitely need a reminder. The biggest thing is you'll have your key right here, but to actually put those things on the map, you need to use the layers map or kind of key, and that way you can click on and off the locations that you would like to see on the map. Right now, we just have H2A. And then this 1 hour drive time to migrant health centers, which I'll talk about in a second. I'm going to change these filters a little bit so that our beginning dates, we'll keep it, are this year. So this is going to be how you filter what H2A sites you'd like on your map. So this will be when the job order says the employment opportunity starts. So we'll just give it a large range for now. And this will be when it ends. So we may want actually more active sites. So we'll put this at June and all the way to December. And so now we have our H2A sites. When you hover over them, it'll tell you a little bit more information. So this is a work site. It'll tell you that employer name, the address, the beginning date and the end date of the job order. And then it does have a job order link. These tooltips are not super customizable. So we have the option instead to download the data, and that's the best way to actually copy and paste that link. The other thing that I'll point out on this is we do have the total H2A workers requested. So at this work site, for example, there's only one. And then you can kind of start moving around and seeing those as a housing site. Let's grab one. So here, well, again, you see that begin and end date, and then the total occupancy. So that's how many beds, how many available folks could potentially be living there. The 1 hour drive, so maybe we want to put on our migrant health centers as well. You'll see those pop up in purple. Oops, that's an overview. And so those guys, that'll give you more information as well. And these are health centers that have migrant health funding to specifically serve farm workers. And so really great resources in the area. And so this is going to be a service delivery site. It gives you a little bit more information about that. And then the 1 hour drive to the Migrant Health Center is our attempt at trying to visualize the potential service area and what is potentially accessible to the Migrant Health Center from those different work site and farms and housing locations. So it kind of lets you see maybe where potential gaps are. Turn some of these off. And then lastly, we have the farm locations that we have for this map, which are those inspected by Wage Hour Division and OSHA. And you can kind of start to see, I mean, these fall along, you know, next to where those H2A farms are as well. Again, that download data right now, the data that's downloadable is just those H2A information. It gives you everything that's on those job orders for both work sites and housing sites. But we definitely see opportunity to add, you know, if you're wanting to download some of these other data sets in the future as well. All right. I think that's it. If folks have questions, please let me know.
I don't think we have any new questions just yet, but y'all feel free to put in the chat, or if you'd rather just talk, that's fine too.
Yes, so the H2A data right now, our plan is to update that on a quarterly basis. So I think the one that we have in there right now we added in May or June. So we'll be updating that in a couple months. And yes, Sylvia did point out the Migrant Health Center data can be downloaded. And actually, I think it's all community health centers from our website. Yes, you can get that. The WHD and OSHA data is publicly available. We can touch base with you about getting that the sources to you. All right.
All right, I'm going to put some evaluation links in the chat here. If you all can take a minute to fill that out. We'll also email them too if you don't have time right now.
Thanks, Bethany. And I have a couple additional things. Let's see if we did this. Our dashboard, as I mentioned, is accessible through a form. So we do have a website. It's live now where you can access that form. So if you do have colleagues that are interested in accessing the dashboard, we ask you can direct them to this, and on that they will have a button that they click to actually fill out a form for us. And again, this is just a little extra protection and allows us also to tell you a little bit more about the data sources and the limitations. And I think if you registered for this webinar before Tuesday, hopefully you got an email from me with the option to access the dashboard with the form. But again, anyone can access that, and we'll also send out an email after this webinar with this information as well. And then we'll kind of review that form and give you, and then follow up with a link as well. You'll get 2 emails from us, one with the link to the dashboard and some login information. And then a separate one will actually ask you to verify your email. Please do that. I know that there's been a couple of hiccups with that. So if you do have any issues, please just reach out to me and we'll get you fixed up. And then just to close out, a few other things that I just want to highlight. NCFH does have a lot of other resources, one of them being our call for health line. Yeah, so this is our helpline for farm workers and their families. We connect farm workers with healthcare and social services. So this is national. And we also provide financial resources for health services if available. If you haven't signed up for our newsletters, please do that. And yeah, please, we really do want your feedback. This has been a work in progress for quite some time now, and we're so thankful for the folks that were able to test it and give us some feedback on ways to improve it. And we're really looking for that. Our goal is for this to be usable for y'all. And so if there's data that you wish that was on here, let us know, or different kinds of information. I will say, since we're looking at a national scale, our priority is really set on national data sets, but we're open. So please let us know if you have ideas. Y'all will be the first people to use it. We have tested it, but if you find errors or things like that, definitely let us know that as well. Where we want it to be the best it can be and really support the work that y'all are doing. And I think that's it. As Bethany mentioned, a survey available in English or Spanish. And then of course, if you have, please let me know.
And just again, for folks, we will share the slides with you, the evaluation link, and the link to the recording via email. And I'll post the links again here to the surveys. It's a busy chat, so things get lost. Thank you all so much for coming. And yeah, I really like the idea of having a form for feedback. But for right now, if you can email Sarah, and I'll drop her email one more time in the chat.
And thank you all for coming. We're really excited to see how you use it.
We'll hang out for 5 more minutes. I'll put on some music again, but we'll hang out for a few minutes in case people have questions.
Sarah, this is Miriam Kelly from Richardson. You did say that we were going to get a copy of the slides and the presentation, right? Do we have to do anything for that, or do we just send you an email?
We'll be sending it out to the registration list.
Okay.
So if you were registered, you'll get one. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thanks for helping me realize that I was already registered. I really do appreciate that as well.
Of course.